ceremony will begin in 1 minute. Please take your seats and silence or turn off all personal electronic devices. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 2025 Hart County and Hart County High School Veterans Day ceremony. Join me as we welcome to the stage Mr. Steve Burton, the CEO of the Hart County College and Career Academy.
Good morning. Ms. Janet Bridges, veterans from the American Legion Post 109, veterans from the VFW Post 8076, Superintendent Carter, our Board of Education members, students, and most of all, our Hart County veterans. Welcome to our 2025 Veterans Day program, and veterans, please know that we are honored to have each and every one of you here with us today. We recognize and we acknowledge that your service defends our right to assembly. This morning, our school and community pause to honor the men and women who sacrificed so much so that we remain the land of the free. We look forward to the remarks of Colonel Myers and the singing of our national anthem by our talented chamber chorus. We welcome the veterans who are present with us today, and we hope you will participate in the salute to the individual services during the Armed Force Medley. Mr. Talbert, the symphonic band looks and sounds great today. As always, our technology students worked hard to produce a video that I believe will highlight the sacrifice of our service members take on daily. This year, students will close the ceremony by reading the names of Hart Countyans who paid the ultimate sacrifice in service to their country. We are also privileged to have Ms. Janet Bridges, Regent of the John Benson chapter of the National Society, Daughters of the American Revolution, who will present a wreath in recognition of these honored veterans. From the front lines of combat to the readiness to defend our Constitution, our nation's service members and veterans answer the call to serve. Today, we hope to express our sincere appreciation for your service. Welcome to Hart County High School.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Cadet Ethan Stovall, the Cadet Battalion Commander for the Hart County High School Bulldog Battalion. Please stand and join me for the posting of the colors and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance and for the National Anthem. Color Guard, post! Work time, work! Go, halt! Left, hey! Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing for the national anthem performed by the Hart County High School Chamber Chorus led by Miss Hillary Davison. It is customary for uniformed personnel and veterans to stand at attention and render the hand salute while indoors, and for citizens to place their right hand over their heart during the national anthem. Breathing. On.
twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes send bright stars through the perilous fight, o'er the ramparts we watched, were so gallantly streaming. And the rockets rang clear, the bombs bursting in air, gave proofs through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Order, arms. Left, hey. Forward, march.
Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats and direct your attention to the stage as the Hart County High School Symphonic Band plays the Armed Forces Medley and the Hart County High School GRTC presents the service flags for our armed forces. It is customary for the service flag of the respective song remain upright while the other service flags dip in respect. It is also customary for veterans of each service to stand when their song is played. Ladies and gentlemen, please direct your attention to the screen for a video salute to veterans. This tribute video was produced by our talented video and production team under the direction of Mr. Greg Gaines.
Down by the lake where the pines stand tall, there's a story in the breeze that whispers to us all. From Coldwater Creek to the old courthouse square, you'll find the kind of courage that's getting rare. Men and women who packed their bags, left small town life for a duffel and dog tags. They stood for freedom far from home so we could live beneath this red clay dome. Now they are the heroes of Hart County, strong as the ridge lines rolling around me. From Reed Creek Road to Old Highway 29, they carried our pride through the fire lines. Every flag that waves in the hometown breeze is standing tall because of folks like these. Yeah, we honor them today and every day we care. Hart County's finest, every woman and man. Some came home and built a life right here, coaching ball teams, praying pews, sharing laughter year to year. Others rest now where the church bells ring, but their legacy lives in every freedom we sing. They taught us what it means to stand for something bigger than a single man, and we won't forget the price they paid for the calm and comfort this hometown gave. They are the heroes of Hart County, strong as the ridge lines rolling around me. From Reed Creek Road to Old Highway 29, they carried our pride through the fire lines. Every flag that waves in the hometown breeze is standing tall because of folks like these. Yeah, we honor them today and every day we can. Hart County's finest, every woman and man. So raise that banner high at the game tonight. Let the stadium glow in red, blue, and white. Say a prayer for the ones still overseas, and a thank you for the ones who came home to these trees. They are the heroes of Hart County, steady as the lake that lies around me. From Milltown Road to downtown Hartwell's lights, their bravery shines in our quiet nights. Every freedom we hold, every breath we take, it's built on the hearts they chose to stake. So here's to the soldiers who answered the call, Hart County's heroes. God bless them all.
Good morning, everyone. On behalf of the John Benson Chapter National Society Daughters of the American Revolution, we would like to present this wreath in honor of veterans past and present. On this Veterans Day and every day, let us remember the service of our veterans and let us renew our national promise to fulfill our sacred obligations to our veterans and their families who have sacrificed so much so that we can live free. Now I have a poem I'd like to read, and this is in honor of veterans past and present. Lest we forget, they stood where fear and courage met, so we could dream in safety yet. Their voices gone, their gifts remain, a world rebuilt from loss and pain. We live the peace their hearts begat, with quiet thanks, lest we forget. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Lieutenant Colonel Chris Carter and the Senior Army Instructor here at Hart County High School. It is my pleasure to introduce our guest speaker today. Not only is he our guest speaker, I call him a good friend of mine and also a mentor, and also a man I like to say that has been blessed with wisdom granted by our Lord. Colonel Myers served 27 years, or over 27 years, as an officer in the United States Army after graduating from the University of North Georgia. He served as a military police officer and commanded at multiple levels, to include service as a provost marshal, the senior Army law enforcement officer at an Army installation. His overseas service includes Alaska, Kuwait, and Haiti, as well as hurricane relief in South Florida. After retiring from the Army, Colonel Myers served as a founding father of the Hart County Army JROTC Bulldog Battalion. He continues to serve our community in multiple roles and is truly a man that we should all try to emulate. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Colonel Myers.
Well, good morning. Thank you very much, Colonel Carter. It's a real privilege and a pleasure to be back with you all here today, and a privilege to be here on this very special day. After Colonel Carter contacted me about being the guest speaker for today's event, I made a few assumptions. Now, that's dangerous, I know, but I assumed I didn't need to differentiate between Veterans Day and Memorial Day. I also didn't think I needed to outline the entire history of Veterans Day in the United States. It began after World War I as Armistice Day to commemorate the end of the First World War. It's been through a series of presidential decisions and congressional actions that resulted in its return to being celebrated as a national holiday on November the 11th of each year. So who qualifies as a veteran? A veteran is anyone who has served honorably in the armed forces, the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine Corps, Coast Guard, and today in the Space Force. And that includes service on either active duty or in the reserve components. The reserves are National Guard of any of the services that I just named. It's also important to note that one doesn't have to, quote, go to war or serve in combat to qualify as a veteran. So after thinking about all that, I decided to talk with you today about what it means to me to be a veteran. I call it the 3 S's: service, sacrifice, and satisfaction. I'll illustrate what I mean by describing the most challenging and rewarding thing that I participated in during over 29 years on active duty in the U.S. Army. During the summer of 1992, I was transferred from Fort McClellan, Alabama to Fort Bragg, North Carolina, where I was assigned as the Provost Marshal of the 82nd Airborne Division. Now, Provost Marshal is a fancy military term for being the police chief of that famous Army combat unit. As I got to the 82nd, it was fielding or beginning to use some new Army equipment. That process required the division would change its way of doing business in the field or when it went to war. The 82nd is the Army's Rapid Reaction Force, tasked with being able to have the lead or the first elements, paratroopers and their equipment, loaded on U.S. Air Force transport planes and ready for combat within 18 hours of notification. The 82nd was used to operating with only 2 command post elements, the TAC CP, or Tactical Command Post, led by the ADC Ops, or Assistant Division Commander for Operations. That element supervised the part of the 82nd that was actually in contact with the enemy. We also had the Main CP, or Main Command Post, where the division commanding general and the bulk of his staff monitored the current fight while they planned future operations. The Rear CP, supervised by the Assistant Division Commander for Support, or ADCS, remained at Fort Bragg under normal circumstances as it conducted resupply and sustainment operations for the committed combat elements during the first stages of an operation. The Rear CP is the location that I and my staff in the Provost Marshal Office were normally located. But the new equipment that the division was fielding required the 82nd to practice combat operations with all 3 CPs in the field at the same time. From a previous assignment, I was familiar with the new equipment that the division was fielding, so I was chosen to be the Chief of Staff of the Division Rear CP in addition to being the Provost Marshal. In late summer of 1992, after I arrived from Fort McClellan, the 82nd was celebrating its beginning as an infantry division in World War I. We had a summer formal event, a dinner and dance at Fort Bragg Officers Club, where we celebrated the 82nd's history as the All-American Division. When it was formed, it had soldiers from every state in the Union in it, thus the All-Americans. A couple of days before our summer formal, Hurricane Andrew came ashore in South Florida, bringing tremendous devastation to the area. Shortly after the hurricane passed, the mayor of Miami went on national TV and pleaded with the president for help, asking, "Mr. President, where in the heck is the cavalry?" As we went home from the formal that Friday night, the division staff found out who and where the cavalry was that would ride to Miami's rescue. Phones started ringing in our homes, advising that a warning had come down from Washington to prepare for deployment to Florida. The 82nd's planning element had already begun work when the rest of the staff and subordinate commanders were called in to division headquarters at 4:30 on Saturday morning. The 82nd's planning element had already received notification at 2:30 that morning that elements of the division were required to deploy to South Florida to provide emergency relief to the people affected by Hurricane Andrew. As we gathered in the 82nd conference room at division headquarters at 4:30 on Saturday morning, we learned that we had to have the first elements of deploying paratroopers and their equipment on the way to South Florida by 8:30 that night. That's in keeping with the 18-hour deployment window that we routinely practiced. As the briefing progressed, I learned that since this was a support operation, not combat, the headquarters element that would deploy with the paratroopers to help bring disaster relief was the Rear Command Post, led by Brigadier General Carl Ernst, the ADCS. Our mission was simple. We were told to put Maroon Berets on the ground in South Florida just as soon as we could. After the briefing, General Ernst, from his place at the head table, turned around, found me way in the back at the back wall, and called me forward to his seat. There he told me, "Listen, I'm getting on the first thing smoking." By that he meant the first Air Force transport that he could hijack. And he wanted me to get the Rear CP staff together and get to Florida just as soon as we could. The next hours just raced by. General Ernst flew to Florida shortly after sunrise on Saturday, while I gathered the staff and began planning our own deployment. I and part of the staff flew from Pope Air Force Base, which was adjacent to Fort Bragg, just after dark that night. The remainder of the staff prepared to convoy down to Florida from Fort Bragg. Meanwhile, on the ground in Florida, General Ernst had met with Brigadier General Wright, who commanded the support headquarters at Fort Bragg. They got together on the ground at Homestead Air Force Base, south of Miami, and reconnoitered or reconned as much of the damaged area as they could. They also drew up plans for replacing the deploying units and equipment to provide support to those who'd survived the hurricane. They decided to use locations that were familiar to people in the area, such as schools, churches, and government buildings, so that the people in need would know where to go for food, water, and other items necessary to begin recovery operations. When I met General Ernst early on Sunday morning, he told me the plan and directed us to go from Homestead Air Force Base to a federal government building in Cutler Ridge, Florida, about 15 miles to the north. He wanted to see if that site was suitable for the 82nd to set up his command post to supervise recovery operations. The building in Cutler Ridge was perfect. It was already partially occupied by other relief agencies. It had large generators for power for the occupants, and it had running water, which had not been compromised by the storm. Once the rest of our staff arrived, we set up in a federal courtroom there in the building. We directed relief and recovery operations from South Miami all the way down to Homestead Air Force Base from there for the next 6 weeks. We got by on about 4 hours of sleep each night, but it was worth it. The residents and the government officials were so grateful for what we were doing that it brought tears to my eyes. Now, I don't mean to overstate what the 82nd and the other deploying units did after Hurricane Andrew. In fact, once the large recovery contracts were awarded and FEMA got on the ground, the civilian contractors did more in 1 week than we had accomplished in the preceding 5 weeks. But when we were needed, we were there. As we reassembled at Homestead to get ready to fly back to Fort Bragg, General Ernst told me that one day you'll appreciate what we've done here. Considering how demanding he'd been while we'd been deployed, that meant a lot to me. Service, sacrifice, and satisfaction. This veteran carries all that with me inside over 30 years later. I thank you all for the opportunity to share this story with you today, and I wish you all a very happy Veterans Day. I'll close with a special salute to my fellow veterans who've given so much to this country. May God bless you all, and may God bless the United States of America. Airborne.
Ladies and gentlemen, please remain silent as we recognize the Hart County veterans who paid the ultimate sacrifice for our country.
Spanish-American War, George Reisner. Mexican Punitive Expedition, DeWitt Rucker. World War I, John W. Adams, Owen J. Alford, Erskine Allen, George W. Kaysen, Preston B. Carter, Samuel J. Chaplier, William J. Conley, Charles P. Dodd, James B. Estes, Henry Gaines, Anderson Harris, John R. Heaton, Oscar B. McCurley, Lawrence Nix, George W. Patterson, Claude Stevenson, Gilbert Thompson, Yancey J. Wilson.
World War II, Clifford A. Alewan, Paris D. Bray, Willie Lee Cape, Gordon B. Chastain, Clifford D. Drake, Jack C. Fleming, Lucius Franklin, Benny Lindsay Gaines, Lloyd R. Gaines, Brian M. Grisby, Francis E. Haley, John Parks Harper, W. A. Hayes, Joel L. Herndon, J.T. House, Robert Johnson, Walker H.K., Fred M. Martin, Rankin Q. McGee, Clarence A. Marie, John G. Nelms.
Joe Franklin Obar, Winston Obar, James W. Purcell, Clarence W. Rice Jr., Robert B. Richardson, Charles S. Robert Sr., John E. Rucker, Frank Lee Sanders, Enoch A. Scales, Knox L. Scales, Frank Lee Seymour, Ralph Sherrod, Travis G. Smith, Holton D. Stovall, Thomas G. Wellborn, William Marion Wilcox, Jack C. Wilson.
Korean War, Fletcher Gaines, Clarence Heaton Jr., McDoyle McLean, Carl Wesley Rowland, Amos Cleveland Pete Temple.
Vietnam War, Louis John Clever, Ralph Duard Cordell, Thaddeus Dorette, Bobby James, Galen Minor Smith, Sammy H. Whitworth.
Ladies and gentlemen, please stand as two distinguished members of the Hart County Marching Band will now play taps. Please observe a moment of silence following.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to go off script for a second. Every battle I faced in combat, it never went to plan, but we won. I'm going to ask everybody except for the veterans and the spouses of veterans to take a seat. So if veterans and spouses of veterans will remain standing. At this time, if we could all give them a round of applause and recognize them for their service. All right, ladies and gentlemen, now this concludes our ceremony. Today and all days of the year, I ask that you will remember the sacrifices of those who have served to protect our cherished freedoms, especially to those who have made the ultimate sacrifice. Thank you, and may God bless America.